beyond just static routing of strings, a really cool thing about the routing in a web application framework is you can have variables. So check this out. If you put the, again, this is all magical because you just have to read the tutorials of the framework, right? This is all magical. If you say username here in brackets or whatever these things are, then this actually is a variable pattern match. So it says user / whatever you pass in, it will actually take this variable name and use it. You can use it as a variable name in your code. So you can say hello plus username, like that. Let's try this. This works. Exclamation, exclamation. So what this will do is it will actually magically take this thing and, does this work? Yeah, okay. It'll magically take this username and assign it to here. So first, let's see if it works, and then we'll talk about it. So now there's no match for user because you need user / some username. So we'll say Alice, like that. Ah, okay, no arguments.
I think you need to pass username.
Yeah, okay, you need to pass your, good point. I thought it was super magical. All right, see, I thought it was really magical and it like magically did. Okay, it's not as magical. Okay, so you have to pass username as an argument. All right, that wasn't as cool, but let's see if this works. Okay, all right, so it says hello Alice, and if you pass in Bob, it does what I expect. So this is kind of neat because you get an infinite number of URLs now. This is really neat, right? So if you did this with your CGI script, it's impossible. You have to make a file for every person's name, and it seems absurd. But with this, it's magical. You only have one script. It's actually really short. It fits on a page, and you can pass anybody's name in you want now, and it just passes the function. I was hoping it'd be more magical than this, but it is not that magical. So it will, I think, call the function with the first, I guess, thing bound to your name, and then you can just you can do that. So you can imagine how this works in behind the scenes, right? Like the framework parses the URL, gets the username entry, and then calls the function with the username as a parameter and does this. There's also more fancy routing you can do. You can actually look. There's like more fancy patterns you can match with, but it's basically the same idea that you can match variable names. So it's pretty nice. I mean, with 13 lines of code, we actually have an application that can take not only the / for your home page, but a /user / Alice or whatever for this. Okay, so moving on to the next step. So it's great to just print text, but you actually you want to print an HTML web page, right? Like this is kind of bare bones. We want to actually make a web page. So how do we do that? So in CGI, what we had to do is we had to print the whole web page out, right? It was like super annoying. Like print HTML and print head and so on, right? It's like super annoying to print out the whole web page, and then to construct a new web page, you got to print another one. It's super annoying. So another nice thing that frameworks provide is templates for making web pages with variables in them. Flask does. It says by convention, all your HTML templates should be in a subdirectory called templates with an S. So if you don't put it in a subdirectory, things explode, right? So again, with frameworks, it makes it convenient as long as you follow all their rules. The rules is make a subdirectory called templates and put all your HTML files you want templated into there. So I call it profile.html. Okay, so what is profile.html? My most basic version looks something like this. So if you squint hard at it, it looks like HTML. There's an HTML, there's a body, there's no head or anything. And now what is this crazy weird stuff here? There's like if, end if thing. Oh, there's a button also. Okay, so there's a button with an ID. But now notice how this looks like HTML, but almost, right? It doesn't really look like HTML because there's this weird like squiggly if statements and stuff. So what this is that this is a template language that Flask uses. I think this template's called Jinja2 or whatever. All these things like have non-discernible names, but they're something, right? Again, there's a bazillion template languages. This is the one that Flask uses, so there's a syntax to it. And the syntax, if you squint hard enough, is that you put things between these things, and there's an if statement, if name. So name is a variable, presumably, that you pass into the template. If it exists, then run this code. Run h1 style equals blah, 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 hello name. And if you put name in doubly brackets, it will replace the name variable with the value you pass into the template. And then else, if name is not defined, it will print hello, no name, and end if. So what this will do, if you squint hard enough, is if you run this template with a variable called name assigned to something, it will create an HTML page with this line in it. If you don't have name, it will create a page with this line in it. So this is HTML, but almost HTML, right? This is HTML with some variables you can plug in. So notice if you're, for example, apps, this could be really useful because you might want to generate a page that's all HTML, but you want to put a little hole and say, hello user, or you have X new messages, or your location is whatever. And most of your HTML is static, but you just want a little bit where they can send in variables. So a template is a really good idea for that. And so to read this, what you do is, if name exists, and say hello name. So obviously in the HTML, this is not going to print hello bracket bracket name. It's just going to print hello and paste in the name you pass in. And it'll generate a thing where H1 looks like red. So let's actually run this. So how do we run this? So that's another question. How do we run this? We have to follow the directions for the template code. So we run this in week13.py using a function in the web framework called render template. Now to use this, I need to say render template up here. So I need to import render template, which is a function, and render template is a function. So I call it on profile.html. So the template function, the template file is profile.html. Again, there's a bit of magic here because profile.html, remember, doesn't exist in your directory, it exists in a templates directory. But because this is a convention of Flask, you just say profile.html, and it knows to find it in the templates directory. So if you use a framework like Flask or Django or Ruby on Rails, you're going to see this a lot. It's just basically like you're supposed to put something in a certain place, and it'll magically work. If you don't put it in the magical place, it won't work, and then you're like scratching your head because there's no way to debug it. So you just have to know you put it in templates. Don't misspell it. Just put it in templates. And the second thing you pass to it is a binding. So name equals username. Put these in two separate lines just to make it clear. Okay, so what does this do? This says call the render template function. The template I'm rendering is profile HTML. There's a name variable in this template. There's an empty hole in there. And we're going to fill that in with the username. And remember, where does the username come from? Username comes from the URL. So what this will do, hopefully if this works, is it will return a copy of this HTML file as a string with this set to hello whatever username is. Does that make sense? So it's the equivalent of printing a giant string, but you don't have to make a giant string. So it's pretty convenient if you get all this set up right. So let's see if it works. Let's load it. I'm just gonna be paranoid and reload it because I don't actually know if it's smart enough. It should detect if I change the template. I don't actually know if it's smart enough to do that. So to be paranoid, just reload everything. Okay, so now let's go to user Alice. Let's press enter. There we go. All right. So it actually made an HTML web page. If we look at the source, it's not this crazy template stuff anymore. The source is simply really clean. It's just h1 style red hello Alice, right? It's just the server is returning the straight up HTML to the browser. There's no magic involved. So if I say Bob now, magically it's Bob, right? Killed the URL. Right? So you can actually generate an infinite number of pages this way. And the template thing is really convenient because from one template you can generate this. You can imagine having all sorts of variables in your template and playing around with it. So that's another thing a web application framework gives you, is templating, which is very useful. So far we've given you nice URLs, we've given you templating, and we've given you the ability to do this all in one place, in one piece of code.